Book of Heaven, Volume 18, 10th to the 24th of January 1926. Page 61 to 67. January 10, 1926. The way and the crafting which the divine will makes in all created things in order to reach the creature, so that she may place the final point of its fulfillment. I was fusing all of myself in the holy divine volition, and the littleness of my mind wandered within it. I could see it everywhere and in every place, always in the act of operating in the whole creation. Oh, how I would have wanted to follow it, in order to give it my little requital of love in everything it was doing, my thank you, my profound adoration, my meager company. Now, while I was thinking of this, my adorable Jesus moved in my interior, telling me, "My daughter, my will is always on the way in the created things, in order to go toward creatures. But who fulfills it? Who places the final point on the work of my will? The creature, or rather, the creature who takes all created things as the fulfillment of my will. My will makes its way in the seed, as it makes the earth receive it, giving it the virtue of making it germinate and multiply. It performs its crafting by calling the water to water it, the sun to fecundate it, the wind to purify it, the cold to make it take root, the heat to develop it and make it reach the proper maturity. Then it gives virtue to the machines to cut it, to thresh it, to grind it, so as to be able to give it the substance of bread, and calling the fire to cook it, it offers it to the mouth of the creature, that she may eat of it and preserve her life. See, then, how long a way and a crafting has my will done in that seed, how many things it has called over that seed, to make it reach, as bread, the mouth of creatures. Now, who gives the final step to the way of my will, and the fulfillment of the final act of my supreme volition? One who takes that bread and eats it as bearer of the divine will, within it, and as she eats that bread, she eats my will in it, to increase the strengths of her body and soul, as the divine will's fulfillment of everything. The creature, one can say, is the center of the rest to which my will aspires in all the ways and crafting it makes in all created things, in order to reach the creature. The same with all other created things which serve man. My will makes its way in the sea, and works in the multiplication of the fish. It makes its way on the earth, and it multiplies plants, animals and birds. It makes its way in the celestial spheres in order to have everything under its eyes, so that nothing may escape it, and it may make itself feet, hands and heart for each creature, to offer each of them the fruit of its innumerable harvests. But all its feast is only for those who take of its own as the final point and fulfillment of its supreme volition. If it wasn't for my will, which, as its fiat was released, left itself on the way in all created things in order to make them reach man, so that the supreme fiat might have its first place in the one for whom all things had been created, therefore being the ruler and the actor of the very life of the creature, all things would remain paralyzed and like many painted pictures in which the life of the things that they portray is absent. So, poor creature, if my will withdrew from making its way in all created things, these would all remain like painted pictures, no longer producing the good that each thing contains toward man. Therefore, I can say that it is not created things that serve him, but it is my will, veiled, hidden, that makes itself the servant of man. Is it not right, then, and the most sacred duty, for him to look at my supreme will in all things, and to fulfill it in everything, and, returning the service, to serve the one who does not disdain to serve him even in the smallest things? And I feel as though compensated, repaid of my crafting, when I see that they reach him, and he takes them as the fulfillment of my will. And therefore I make feast, because the purpose of my long way in the created things has obtained my intent and the fulfillment of my will realized in the creature. It happens to my will as to an actor who must present his show to the audience. Poor one, how many hidden works, how many vigils, how many preparations, how much art does he not prepare even in his movements so that his postures may make the audience, now smile, now cry. In all this crafting, the actor does not make feast, on the contrary, he sweats, toils and labors. And when everything seems to be prepared, he prepares himself to call the public to see his show, and the more people he sees, the more he feels joy arise in his heart, for, who knows, he might be able to make a beautiful feast. But the true fulfillment of his feast is when, the show having been performed, full-handed, he feels coins of gold and silver flow in his hands, as appreciation and triumph of his show. But if after so many preparations, he sets everything up, he plays and plays toy trumpets, but nobody shows up, or just a few people who leave him alone at the first acts of the show, poor one, how he suffers, and the hope of his feast turns into mourning. Who is it that so much embittered that poor actor, so capable and kind in performing his scenes? Ah, the ungrateful people, who did not even want to be spectators of the scenes of that poor actor. Such is my will, which, like capable actor, prepares the most beautiful scenes in order to amuse man in the theater of the whole creation, not to receive, but to give. It prepares scenes of light, of the most refulgent, scenes of flowerings and of beauties, the most radiant, scenes of strength in the roaring of the thunder, in the bursting of the thunderbolt, in the continuous rising of the waves, and even on the height of the highest mountains, the most moving scenes of a baby who cries, shivers, and is numb with cold, sorrowful and tragic scenes of blood, and even of death, in my passion. No actor, as capable as he might be, can match me in the varieties of my loving scenes. But, alas, how many do not look at my will in all these scenes, and do not take the substance of the fruit which is in them, and turn the feasts which my will prepared in creation and in redemption into mourning. Therefore, my daughter, let nothing escape you. Take all things as a gift that my will gives you, whether they are small or great, natural or supernatural, bitter or sweet, let them all enter into you as gifts and as the fulfillment of my will. January 24, 1926. The divine will is mother of all human wills. In the divine will there are no deaths. I felt all abandoned by heaven and by the earth, and I thought to myself that Jesus had told me a long time before that I was to live in the hard exile of life as if there were no one else but Jesus and I. Everyone was to disappear from my mind and from my heart. And now, after everything has disappeared from me and I am used to living only with Jesus, he too has run away, leaving me alone, prey to unspeakable bitternesses, in this hard state of isolation. Oh, God, what pain! Have pity on me. Come back to the one who feels the need of your life, more than of her own life. Now, while I was thinking of this, and of other yet more harrowing things, which it would be too long to say, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior, and sighing, told me, "Daughter of my supreme volition, courage in your isolation. This serves as company for my will, abandoned by creatures. The sorrow of its isolation, oh, how harder than yours it is. My will is the mother of all the wills of creatures. As most tender mother, she left herself in the center of creation in order to deliver the human wills and keep them all around herself, to raise them upon her knees, nourish them with the milk of her celestial teachings, and make them grow in her likeness, giving them all creation in which to amuse themselves. And since my will is center of each created thing, wherever the creatures would go, she, as center of all things, would remain always near them, more than affectionate mother, that they might never lack her maternal cares, nor descend from her nobility and likeness. But, alas, these daughters, the human wills, delivered by this celestial mother, my will, despising and neglecting all her maternal cares, her love, her tendernesses and attentions, even though my will is near them, these human wills are far away from this mother. Many of them don't even know her. Others despise her and make fun of her. Poor mother, which is my will, in the midst of so many daughters delivered by her, she remains isolated, abandoned, and while all of them take from her own in order to live, they use it to grow in dissimilarity from her, and to offend her. Can there be greater sorrow for a mother than the abandonment of her children? Not to be known by the fruit of her own womb, which, turning into enemies, offend the one who brought them to the light. Therefore, the sorrow of isolation of my will is great and inconceivable. So, may your isolation be the company of this isolated mother, who cries and searches for her children, but as much as she cries, shouts, and calls her children, whether with the most tender voices, with the most bitter tears, with the most ardent sighs, or with the most thundering voices of chastisements, these unruly children keep far away from the womb of she who generated them. My daughter, do you not want to share, as true faithful daughter of my will, in her sorrow and in her isolation? Then, after this, I began to do the adoration to my crucified good, but before my mind passed a long line of soldiers, all armed up, which never ended. I would have wanted to think about my crucified Jesus, rather than see soldiers, but, against my will, I was forced to see these soldiers, equipped for anything. So I prayed my sweet Jesus to take that sight away from me, that I might be free to be with him, and Jesus, all afflicted, told me, "My daughter, the more it seems that the world is apparently in peace, and they sing the praises of peace, the more they hide wars, revolutions and tragic scenes for poor humanity, under that ephemeral and masked peace. And the more it seems that they favor my church, and sing hymns of victories and triumphs, and practices of union between state and church, the closer the brawl is which they are preparing against her." The same was for me. Up until they acclaimed me as king and received me in triumph, I was able to live in the midst of the peoples. But after my triumphant entrance into Jerusalem, they no longer let me live, and after a few days they shouted at me, "Crucify him," and all taking arms against me, they made me die. When things do not start from a foundation of truth, they have no strength to reign for a long time, because, since truth is missing, love is missing, and the life that sustains it is missing. Therefore, what they were hiding easily comes out, and they turn peace into war, and favors into revenges. Oh, how many unexpected things they are preparing. Jesus disappeared, and I remained all afflicted, thinking to myself, my beloved Jesus has told me many times that I was the little newborn of the divine will, just newly born, without having formed my little life in this supreme volition. And now that I am most in need in order to form my growth, Jesus leaves me alone. So, I will be like an aborted birth in the divine will, without having existence. Don't you see, then, my love, in what pitiful state I find myself, and how your very designs upon me are reduced to nothing? Oh please, if you do not want to have pity on me, have pity on yourself, on your designs and on your works which you have made for my poor soul. But while my poor mind wanted to go further into the sorrowful state I was in, my beloved good came out from within my interior, and looking at me thoroughly, from head to foot, told me, "My daughter, in my will there are neither deaths nor abortions, and one who lives in it contains, as life, the life of my will. And even if she feels herself dying, or even dead, she is in my will which, containing life, makes her rise again, in every instant, to new light, to new beauty, grace and happiness, delighting in preserving her always little within itself, so as to have her great with itself, little but strong, little but beautiful, just newly born, so that she might have nothing human, but everything divine. So, her life is my will alone, which will carry out all my designs, without dispersing anything. You will be like the drop of water submerged within the great sea, like the grain of wheat amidst the great masses of grains. As much as the drop of water seems as though disappeared within the sea, just as the grain amidst the innumerable grains, no one can deny or take away from them the right that their life exists. Therefore, do not fear, and make it so that you lose your life, in order to acquire the right to have my will alone as life.